Austin Andrews here with your Beacon. Today we take a look at health crisis, our action steps. We've spent the week discussing the current health crisis in the United States. From diabetes to cancer, potential vaccine harm, and the profit incentive for pharmaceutical companies to medicate our suffering rather than solve the cause. If you have listened to these episodes, you have hopefully found them informative. But today's will be a little different because while we could spend another week or two or a month or forever discussing the problems, I do think it's important that we get to some solutions. I also want to remind you that all of these podcasts have been loaded up at The Beacon with Austin Andrews on podcast apps on every platform. And you can listen to all of these recaps from this week anytime you would like. Now, I know that many of us hear these messages and think, well, what is the magic cure that I have to buy? What do I have to fork out at this moment? And I understand that because that's how the pharmaceutical company has been working with all of us. They present every issue under the sun and how they have the miraculous cure. But the reality is, Dr. Casey's not suggesting that here. She agrees with most of this issue being systemic health problems that are being caused by our diet. So I guess the question that you and I should be asking is, what does Dr. Casey eat? She tells Tucker Carlson what she eats here.
Number one thing that people need to understand is we need to stop eating ultra-processed food. We need to stop eating.
So what is ultra-processed? Can you just give examples?
Absolutely. So ultra-processed food is basically all the things that you're seeing at the grocery store that have this laundry list of ingredients that usually are based on 3 ingredients: ultra-processed flour, ultra-processed added sugars, and ultra-processed seed oil. So this is going to be like white flour, cane sugar, and things like cottonseed oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil. So these crappy foods that did not exist 150 years ago, ultra-fine white flour, added sugars, and seed oils.
That's like all brand name
It's
foods.
like everything. I mean, we have a list in the book of what you should not eat, and it's basically everything at the grocery store. I mean, we should all be shopping at there are 9,000 farmers markets in the United States right now. People can make the effort and reprioritize their values to focus on getting nutritious food. We need to be eating organic, unprocessed foods for the vast majority of our calories. And we need to get back to having a sense of pride and responsibility in our households to cook food. One of the unintentional downsides of the feminist movement is that we somehow made people feel that food preparation was like a less than activity. I bought into this for my entire early professional life, that it was somehow beneath me. I was like a slave in the kitchen if I was cooking for husband or family. There is no more important thing we can be doing than feeding our children and our families healthy food. Less than 30% of American families are eating together more than once per week. We need to be sitting down at the dinner table eating real, unprocessed food cooked with love at home. There is no way to drug ourselves out of the fact that, we eat 40 to 70 metric tons of food in our lifetime. It's a lot of food, right? This is the molecular information that is building our bodies, building our brains, making our hormones, feeding our microbiome. The food is what we are built of. And right now, 70% of it is trash made from a factory to addict us. Of course, we're sick. So that is number one. So to answer your question very specifically, I don't follow dietary dogma. I eat organic, unprocessed foods that I buy at the farmer's market, and I cook every single meal for my partner and I. And when I have children in the next few years, I am so deeply excited to cook every meal for them from scratch because there's nothing more important. And so, for people who can't necessarily get to a farmer's market, it's go to Costco.
Man, you are radical. I love it.
How is this radical?
It's not.
Isn't it wild that this is radical?
It's such a total rejection at every level of the values of our society, which I
had to wake up. I was so deep in this in my 20s, I cannot even tell you. Like, I was deep in the opposite of this. And so, I believe that no one wants to be sick, No. But the answer is on our fork. So I would say, to get very specific now, organic fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, legumes, meat, poultry, eggs, game meats, grass-fed, organic, pasture-raised.
What about cheese?
Cheese, dairy, but grass-fed, high-quality, organic. The molecular information in these factory cow, these factory farmed cows that are jammed with antibiotics and hormones, that milk is not what you want to be drinking.
The problem isn't the milk, it's the quality.
It's the quality of the milk. Organic food has more nutrients than non-organic food. We need to be... So,
is it hard to find, I love cheese, for example. Cheese. So if
it's at Costco now, grass-fed cheese.
Okay.
I mean, how wild is it that it's illegal to buy raw milk in this country?
Or if it's imported from Europe.
Imported from Europe, yeah, because they're going to have much better
They have Parmesan at Costco that's imported from Europe. It's fine that the lactose and all these allergies that have all just started in the past 30 years are because of the toxicity of the food, not the food itself.
Now, I recognize that many of us just heard dollar signs, and I really do understand that. I don't think my wife and I are in the place where we could afford to make every shift that she just suggested. But I'm not going to go about changing everything at once. And I think we need to just focus on doing our best. Luckily, we do live in an agricultural town where we grow so much food and have opportunity to purchase from one another. And I think that would be wildly better than anything being grown conventionally. Of course, there's another element to all of this, and that would be movement. Now, Dr. Casey approaches movement in a really unique way, so I want to go ahead and present her approach to that movement as well.
If walking were a pill, it would be the most impactful pill we've ever had in all of modern medicine. There was a paper in JAMA, 6,300 participants followed for 10 to 11 years. And the people who simply walked 7,000 steps per day compared to less than that had in up to 70% lower risk of all-cause mortality in the follow-up period. So not causality, but it's pretty incredible. They've done follow-up research with slightly different numbers showing, again, though, like many thousands of people in the study followed for about 10 years, 8,000 to 12,000 steps per day was associated with 50 to 65% lower all-cause mortality. And this has been played out in many studies showing about a 50% reduction in Alzheimer's, dementia, obesity, type 2 diabetes, depression, cancer, gastric reflux, just all across the board. And I think the key thing is that it's not about the steps. It's about the fact that muscle contraction is medicine. When we contract our muscles, even in a very low grade way, like walking or doing a couple air squats, we're activating AMPK and we are essentially causing that cell to have a stimulus to push glucose channels to the cell membrane. Most of the time, the glucose channels are in vesicles, inside, in little bags inside the cells. They're not on the cell membrane. So of course, that's going to keep the glucose in your bloodstream not being processed by the mitochondria. So when we think about steps, it's a proxy metric for just moving more throughout the day.
Folks, the idea of movement not being about a number like the number of steps you have to go to, but instead being about contracting muscles really changes our mind about this. Because what it really means is that you're doing it if you're actually being proactive and moving. You're doing it if you're being intentional about going outside and getting things done. If that's the case, then the focus probably just needs to be on the food for you. Now, I do want to encourage you. You can look up Dr. Casey Means and Tucker Carlson, and you can see the full interview. It's loaded up on YouTube. It's loaded up on other websites as well. We've only brushed the surface of this interview. In fact, there are other segments that are begging to be made into Untold News and Beacon segments. But again, I think it's important for you to realize there's a lot of content out there from Dr. Casey. I also want to encourage you to check out a new book that they did put out. This book is about 3 or 4 months that it's been on the shelves. It's called Good Energy. And many of these topics that they're talking about are in the book. Again, they've also done tons of interviews. So if you don't want to purchase the book or you can't, well, there's a whole slew of information that is available to us if you've appreciated what you've been hearing from Dr. Casey Means and Callie Means. I just want to encourage you to realize you're not alone. Now, as we've been going through this series, I want you to also realize it's not just been for you. I've been digesting this interview actually for over a month now, and it is something that has really challenged me and something that I've taken to heart. I personally struggle with my weight. I have struggled at times to find motivation to move and to go outside and to walk. As you can tell, most of my life happens in front of microphones and computer screens. And so finding time to go outside is one of the essentials that I can't skip. It doesn't come naturally to my occupation. But I want you to realize I'm being challenged by this as well. And I am refusing to be a casualty of the industrial food complex or the pharmaceutical company. So I hope you're encouraged. I actually am. But I hope you're also encouraged that you're not alone. My name's Austin Andrews, and I'll see you on the next report.